All right. Who knows where we are?
We're at Powhatan Church.
You're both right. You're at Powhatan Church, and you're at chapter 32 of Genesis. Now, as I may have mentioned during the prayer requests, Jonathan and I spoke today. So I had about a clear half an hour to look over this chapter and get ready to, to speak on it. But I may have cheated. I may have read this before. So, everybody remember where we ended last time? What happened at the end of chapter 31? We were dealing with Jacob. Where was he?
Let's get ready to head out, depart from Laban and his people.
Yeah. So Jacob had left home so his brother didn't kill him and was sent to his uncle, his sweet, honest, loving uncle. Jacob thought he was clever, and he thought he was a bit of a con man. And then he met the uncle that it came from, who was much better at it than he was. Jacob worked for Laban how many years?
7.
Well, almost like 20 years.
20 years altogether. Now, before we start in 32, we're going to go back. We're going to read just a couple of verses from chapter 28. Chapter 28, verse 13. When Jacob was leaving, before he got out of the Holy Land, he lay down one night to sleep. Does anybody remember what he saw? A ladder with angels going up to heaven and coming down from heaven. And at the head of the ladder stood God. Verse 13, and behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham thy father, and the God of Isaac. The land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And thy seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and the east and the north and the south. And in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. And behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again unto this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. Those were the promises that God made directly to Jacob. I'm going to reward you. I'm going to bless you so that you can be a blessing to the world. And I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to bring you back home. Does that sound generous? Remember, he's alone out here. He's running for his life. Does that sound like a good deal? God says, I'm going to be with you, I'm going to bless you, and you're going to come back here safely. But Jacob is a little immature, and he's a bit of a con man. So he starts to negotiate the terms. Look down at verse 20, still in chapter 28. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, if God will be with me, that's what God said he would do, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. A couple of things to notice here. This is a young man's prayer. This is a little bit immature, right? He's saying, if God will do what he said he's going to do, and two of those things God said he would do. God said that he's going to be with him, and God said that he's going to bring Jacob back. But Jacob adds, you're going to bring me back in peace. And he adds about, you're going to give me bread to eat and raiment to put on. You're going to provide for all of this. God said, I'm going to be with you. God wants him to trust him. Jacob wants to spell it out. Make sure he gets what he thinks he needs and wants. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. It's just a little immature. So something we learn from that is that God, when he accepts us, when we accept him, He doesn't demand that we instantly be perfect. We've been reading the chapters in between these. Does God bless Jacob? Does Jacob instantly become wise and mature and intelligent? Or does he wind up married to two sisters and working for their conman father? Jacob does not become perfect instantly. God doesn't throw him away.
I'm just going to point out that a guy that's married to 4 women and has more than 12 sons is a slave at that point.
I don't think it was only at that point. And keep in mind, he'd been working for 14 years before he talked with his boss about what his payment was really going to be. Right. Well, he also had his hands full because he had 2 wives during that time. Yeah. 2 wives and then 2 concubines, for lack of a better term. So, God didn't demand that he become instantly perfect. God didn't demand that he not have time to grow. 20 years pass in between. Keep in mind this immature prayer of Jacob's as we get into 32. 32, he's finally left Laban. He's taken his wives and his children and the flocks, all of his wages, everything that God has blessed him with. And he's headed back home. And Laban catches up to him and is kind of threatening about it. But the night before he caught up to him, God appeared to Laban and said, "You watch what you say." And so Laban said, "Well, God told me I have to watch what I say. So let's make a deal. We're going to set up a pile of stones here between your land and mine. You don't come across this to attack me. I won't come across this to attack you. How about that?" Jacob said, "Deal." And then he turned around to go back home to face the brother who was trying to kill him last he knew. Jacob is going back, but he's not going back in peace. He's gone from a hard, treacherous situation into one that's had 20 years to simmer. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's host." And he called the name of that place, Mahanaim. So remember where he was. When he left the promised land, he saw the angels going up and coming down, in and out of heaven. Now he's coming back to the land of promise. And the first thing he sees is God's camp. That's what he said. This God's host, that word host also can mean camp. It's a gathering. It's God's people are here. We assume it's a vision of angels. He doesn't go into too much detail about it, though. And you're going to find that a lot in this chapter. Some things get mentioned, we don't get all the details about it. And sometimes that's how God works. So Jacob's coming back. He sees God's host. There's a camp there. He's got a full camp. So he calls the name of the place 2 camps. And Jacob, now we're done with that. We don't get any more detail about this. I would personally love to know what he saw. Get a little more description about it. But that's not what we're given. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother into the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, "Thus shall you speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob saith thus, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now." Okay, notice the language. How did Jacob con his brother? What did he con him out of? The birthright. First was the birthright. Then was the blessing. As their father thought he was going to die, he called his oldest son and said, "I want you to go out into the field. I want you to catch some game, prepare it, bring it in, let me eat it, and I will give you a blessing. And while Esau was out hunting, Jacob and his mother concocted a plan where he would pretend to be Esau and he would get Dad's blessing. From the stories we've heard, did Jacob have a lot of respect for Esau before he left? Did he treat him with any respect at all? You know, we talk about the story of how the birthright was sold. That was the two of them were out. They were away from home. Esau's been out working hard in the field. Jacob stays in the tent and he's cooking. Esau comes in and smells what he's cooking and says, "Oh, that soup is delicious. I am about to die. Please, let me have a bowl of that soup." And Jacob says, "Absolutely. It'll cost you your birthright." Esau says, "Well, what good is a birthright if I'm dead?" So, okay. And we hear that story and we say, well, Esau didn't respect his birthright. And that is absolutely true. He did not take his role seriously. But there's another truth there too. Jacob's a jerk. He saw his brother. He knew his brother. He knew his brother wasn't all that bright. And he saw him tired, weary, and hungry at the end of the day. And he knew he'd go for that deal. I tell you what, you give me the most valuable thing you have for, how about a bowl of soup? You catch somebody hungry and tired enough, they'll take that deal. Yes, Esau was at fault because he didn't value the birthright. Jacob was not innocent. That was a hateful thing to do. He was not treating the birthright with respect. He wasn't treating Esau with respect. Later on, when Dad thought he was dying, did I get those confused? I think I did. When the father was going to bless him, he was going to bless Esau, and Jacob put on a disguise, covered himself in sheepskins. Mom's idea, but Jacob went along with it. So he already had the birthright, and now he got his blessing, his father's dying blessing. And when Esau came in to his dad, had been out, done what his dad asked, hunted, captured some game, brought it in, prepared it, made a meal that Dad loved. And Dad said, "Who are you?" He said, "Well, I'm your son. You told me to do this." And the dad starts shaking. "No, this can't be." And Esau starts crying. "Don't you have a blessing left for me?" Well, no, he doesn't. He had a blessing prepared for you, and somebody else took it. Jacob never treated Esau with respect. Look at what he's saying now, 20 years later. He sends messengers before him to Esau his brother, and he commands them, saying, "Thus so you say, to my lord Esau, your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and now I'm coming home. Says, and I have oxen and asses and flocks and men servants and women servants, and I have sent to tell my Lord that I may find grace in his sight." What's he doing? Is he just bragging for the sake of bragging? He's doing both of those things. One, he's groveling a little bit before his brother. He's treating his brother with the respect he never treated him with before. But he's also showing, listen, I'm not here to take anything from you. I have been blessed. I have what I need. I have a family. I have possessions. So I'm not a threat to you now. So he sends these messengers out. Verse 6, and the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you. Well, that's great. And 400 men with him. What? Jacob's coming with flocks and children and wives, men servants and women servants. Does it ever mention Jacob's army? No. Esau's coming with 400 men. Doesn't say anything about servants. Doesn't say anything about children or flocks. That doesn't sound good. I think that that's the reason that Jacob was given that vision just before this, because he doesn't have an army of his own. But he's camping next to God's army. Who's he supposed to trust? Himself or God? I think God gave him that vision so he would see, you're not alone. I promised you I would be with you, and I'm here. Because things have been scary before in Jacob's life. They're about to get worse. Verse 7. Jacob hears 400 men are coming. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Yes, he was. And he divided the people that was with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels, into 2 bands, and said, if Esau come to the one company and smite it, then the other company which is left shall escape. God promised to be with him when he left. Jacob wanted to alter the terms because he wanted to make sure he had supplies and belongings, right? What's he just done with his supplies and belongings? He's willing to sacrifice half to just hang on to half. Supplies and belongings don't give you security. They don't give you safety. He's willing to cut them in half. Here, take that. Maybe just leave me this. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me, return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become 2 bands. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother with the children. And thou saidst, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. Jacob started back. He gets a vision from God that says, I'm going to be with you. And then he sees why he needs a vision from God. Why he needs that reassurance from God. Because Esau's coming, and he's not bringing women and children. So remember when he started talking to Esau, the messages he sent, suddenly there was respect that wasn't there before. When God spoke to him when he left, he said, all right, if you'll do this, and also this and this and this, then you'll be my God. 20 years of growth and maturity lead to this prayer. Oh God, you are my God before anything else. Oh God, please don't let my brother kill me. His security is not in his belongings, and he's not making deals with God anymore. He's just asking. That's what prayer is. I'm not trying to negotiate with God. I'm not trying to twist God into something I want. I'm just asking. Verse 13, and he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau his brother. So he's split everything up into 2 camps, but now he's been out, he's been looking at it, and so he starts to assemble some things. 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 kine, and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses, and 10 foals. And he delivered them into the hands of his servants. Every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put a space betwixt drove and drove. And he commanded the foremost, saying, When Esau my brother meets thee, and asks thee, saying, Whose art thou, and whither goest thou? And whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, They be my servant Jacob, thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sit unto my lord Esau. And behold, also he is behind us. And so commanded he the second and the third and all that followed the droves, saying, On this manner shall ye speak to Esau when ye find him. And say ye moreover, Behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us. For he said, I will appease him with the present that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face. Peradventure he will accept of me. So he says, all right, I know Esau. And I know that I have cheated Esau out of some things in life. So I'm going to put together presents, and I'm going to send them one after the other. And I'm going to give a little bit of space there so that he can see one coming. He can look at it and examine it, talk to the person, and the person can say, Your servant Jacob gives this to his lord Esau. Enjoy. And while that's going on, he'll see the next one coming. And he has a little bit of time in between, and he's hoping that this is going to impress Esau. Maybe he will accept me. Maybe he won't come and destroy us all. Verse 21, So went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. So he split the camp in two. He sent a bunch of presents out. One of these camps apparently has his wife and children, and he's staying with them in the company. And he rose up that night, verse 22, and took his 2 wives and his 2 woman servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. So there's a little river that they cross over, right? And he took them and sent them over the brook and sent over that he had, and Jacob was left alone. So he splits the camp in two. I'm willing to sacrifice half of what I've got. And now he's taken his wives and his kids, and he sent them on ahead, and he's staying here. What's he done? Who's Esau angry at? Jacob. If he does come to kill him, he's likely going to destroy everything around him. So Jacob has now taken all of his possessions, all of his family, all of his blessings, and he has separated himself. If Esau's going to kill me, let him come kill me. I don't have anything here to defend me. I don't have anything here to shield me, except what I saw when I got here. What's that? God's camp. I am in God's hands. There is nothing more I can do about this situation. There is no way I can defend myself against 400 warriors. I can at least make sure I don't put somebody else in danger. And I'm going to trust myself to God. Verse 24, and Jacob was left alone. Entirely alone? No. Who said he was going to be with him? God. He sent everybody else away. There's somebody here with him. Jacob being Jacob, he's going to wrestle with him. He's fighting him. And this person's fighting him. Jacob's left alone. There wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. There's no sleep this night. Right? And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow at Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. All right. Anybody here ever wrestle with anybody? Doesn't have to be for the Olympics. Doesn't have to be for gold. But just even playing around. You're a sister. I know what sisters fight. I know.
Standards to us a lot.
Who won?
Who do you think?
I'm not going to say on camera. I think both you and Stan know where I live, so I'm going to remain neutral in that. Jacob is wrestling with somebody all night. And he can't beat him, but he won't give up. And this person touches the hollow of his thigh, and his leg is crippled. You wrestle any time against somebody who can cripple you with a touch? I don't recommend it. It's probably not going to end well for you.
Why does it say that the man saw that he couldn't defeat?
So how do you win in wrestling?
You're a pin 'em.
You got to pin them. They've got to give up. What happens if you pin them, then they're down as long as you're holding them down. What happens when you let go? If they're a person of honor who follows the rules, they say, wow, you beat me on that one. Let's have another go. Or please don't ever touch me again. Does that describe Jacob? He a person of honor who follows all the rules? Every time he's defeated and somebody lets up, Jacob's going to keep fighting. He won't lose. He's crippled now. His leg is out of joint. And he still won't stop fighting. And he said, the man he's wrestling with, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. I am not going to stop bothering you. I can't beat you. I can't even hurt you. But I am not going to stop bothering you until you bless me. And he said unto him, what is your name? He said, Jacob. And he, the man, said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. What does Jacob mean?
Trickster.
The trickster, a supplanter, somebody who grabs you from behind and takes you. What does Israel mean?
Prince with God.
Can be termed a prince with God. It can also mean God prevails. It can mean someone who struggles with God. Not just against God, but alongside God. He says, you're not going to be the tricky person, the sneaky person who grabs someone from behind anymore. You're going to be on God's side. You're going to be a warrior for God because you wrestle with God and you won't stop. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. He wouldn't lose. Remember what the prayer was. He said, "O God, I am not worthy. With my staff, I came this way 20 years ago. I had nothing but a stick. And now I have so much that you've given me, I've had to divide it into 2 camps." He said, God has blessed him. Over and above whatever. He asked for bread. He would say, I want to make sure I don't starve. God has blessed him well over and above what he imagined. But he recognizes that the source of his strength is not the blessing. The source of his strength is God. That's where the blessing comes from. And he's not getting distracted by the blessing anymore. He's willing to give it away, give to his brother. The brother he stole from repeatedly, he's now giving gifts to him to make up for it.
The way it said that, he was wrestling with Jesus.
Okay. You remember how I said before, there are things in this chapter that are never answered? Guess what? People have debated this forever. Some people say it's just an angel. Some people say it's just a man who had the misfortune to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some people say it's Jesus. It's the pre-incarnate vision of Jesus that we've run across before. I don't know. We're not given enough in this chapter to tell. Whoever he is, he's from God. Whoever he is, they wrestled. They were close together. But how long? What time of day was it while they were wrestling? It was nighttime. When the man said, "Let me go," he said, "Let me go, for the sun's coming up." He had to let go of him before he could see him. So some people say, okay, that might be a vision of God. He could never see him clearly. Could be. There's nothing here that says that's not the case, but there's nothing here that says that is the case either. Could be an angel, could be pre-incarnate vision of Jesus. We're not given enough to really know.
Verse 30 says that he has seen God face to face.
Verse 30 says that Jacob said, "I have seen God face to face." Jacob asked him, because he says in verse 29, he says, "All right, you've renamed me." Jacob asked him and said, "Tell me, I pray thee, thy name." And he said, "No. Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name?" We don't know. Was it an angel? Was it God? I don't know. So, and he blessed him there, and Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Was he right? Possibly. I can't say 100% for sure. But in the end, does it matter? This person, whoever it was from God. He was doing God's work in God's timing and doing it God's way. Jacob wasn't supposed to know all the answers. He wasn't perfect in his relationship with God, and so he didn't have a perfect understanding of God. But he's still going to be God's warrior. He's better than he was. He's maybe not as good as he will become. But God has taken him, God has changed him, and he's going to continue to change him. And now he has a new role. He's going to work for God. And as he passed over Penuel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel eat not of the sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh, unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh and the sinew that shrank. So he's crippled Jacob, and Jacob's limping. When he left, what did he have? When he left home 20 years ago, what did he say he had? He had a stick. He had a staff. From now on, he's going to have a walking stick because of his leg. Why? God is blessing him. God is making him his warrior. Why is he crippling? For 20 years, well, for a lot of years, up until the last 20 years, Jacob was a strong person. He wasn't as strong as his brother, but he was strong enough to not be in pain. He was strong enough to hopefully outrun his brother. He thought he could depend on himself. He can get by on his wits and his abilities. How'd that work out for him? He went from bad scene to bad scene to bad scene, being taken advantage of to being taken advantage of. He couldn't outwit his uncle. He was never any good at that. But as he learned to depend on God, God blessed him. Where he couldn't overcome with his own cleverness, God blessed him anyway. Now he's gotten to the point where he is more mature. And God says, all right, you can work for me. Now we have a better understanding. But you only really depended on me when you couldn't handle something. When you're facing an army of 400 that's coming and you are scared out of your mind. Sometimes we need that fear for focus, or we need to be aware of our own inabilities for focus. He's given Jacob a permanent reminder of his own inability. Jacob is going to be a strong warrior for God as Israel, and he's going to remain a strong warrior for God with a daily reminder that he leans on God's strength and not his own. All right. Questions or comments? Because that's all I've got. We're at the end of the chapter.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Did you know, I could probably search for it, but when he left home, did it say in the text that all he had was a walking stick?
There's never any mention of people, servants, anything going with him. So apparently he had what he could carry. I'm sure there were provisions. I'm sure his mom packed some food for him, but that didn't make the whole journey. So yeah, he had whatever clothes he had on
I remember he
and a
slept on
walking
a rock.
stick. Yep. He didn't bring a sleeping bag. He didn't bring a pillow. He wasn't in a caravan. It was him, because he was trying to get out of town before his brother could catch him and kill him. So he says, I only had a stick. I think that might be right.
I remember that his mom never saw him again after this incident.
Yeah, I don't think either of them ever did. I think his parents are both dead at this point when he's coming back. All right, so what are we supposed to do with this?
Are we supposed to understand that Jonathan has been touched by God on the shoulder?
That could be. I will say that not every injury is because God wanted you to have it. Sometimes we choose to hurt ourselves by being stupid.
If he's been wrestling with people in the dark.
But I will say that even when we choose to hurt ourselves, God can use it for good. He's very good at taking whatever mess we build for ourselves and working good out of it.
Did Jonathan do anything, as you know of, to injure himself?
The only thing he said was that he was playing with the kids and he tweaked it, and it was bothering him for a few days, but it was getting worse. So, and Joe was mentioning, he injured it, like I said, years ago, and those things can build over time. Sometimes you injure something that doesn't grow back on its own, and it's just going to get weaker and weaker. Yeah. So the biggest thing I get from this is the same thing we keep saying over and over again in our Sunday school class. God will take you as you are, but that does not mean he will leave you as you are. He never does. He takes us while we are lost in sin, reaches out for us and asks us to accept him, and when we do, we begin at salvation. We begin a process of growing as Christians, growing closer to him, learning more and more how to be a Christian, what that means in our daily lives, what that means about our relationship. If you're not growing as a Christian, pray. Talk to the pastor. Not tonight. Do not call him tonight. Tomorrow, call a deacon. Call a Sunday school teacher. Talk to somebody. If you're not growing as a Christian, if there's no change in your life, then you're in danger. We read about all of these people in the Bible that encounter God and become God's servants. How many of them stay the same as they were beforehand? None. Jesus said he didn't come to save the perfect. He came to call sinners to repentance. So Do what?
Yeah, we're no perfect, just him.
That's right. He was the only perfect one. And we nailed him to a piece of wood fast as we could. None of us are perfect. And sometimes we as Christians beat ourselves up for not being perfect. That's not our job. Our job is to go to God with that. I'm not perfect. What do I need to do? And he'll give you one thing to work on. And then while you're working on that thing, there may be another thing. There's always going to be something new. You're never going to get perfect this side of glory. That doesn't mean you don't try. He wants us to improve. He wants us to grow closer to him. That's what I get out of it. He is very patient. We read all about Jacob's life. Jacob was not the smartest guy. Here, I'm going to let you marry 2 sisters. That sounds like a great idea. The sisters come to it. Hey, I've got a servant that you can marry too. Okay. Jonathan said last night, for years, Jacob basically did whatever anybody said. Here's an idea. Okay, I'll do that. He was probably tired from all of the arguing because of the situation he got himself into. Remember at one point, one wife paid off another wife for his services as a husband. Met him when he was coming back to camp and said, I've paid for you tonight. You're coming with me. What did he say? Okay. And God took all of that giant mess he made, and he still turned it into a blessing. Now, the story's not over yet. There are further adventures. There are further misadventures. Things happen because of what happened before that we will read about more. But God can take our mess and make something good out of it. That's what's important to remember. All we have to do is be willing to let him be God, and he'll take the rest. Questions or comments?
You know, we're studying Paul on Sunday nights.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking of the parallel that, you know, he was trying to destroy Christianity.
Yep.
But God saw his potential and knew that his background as a Pharisee, he had all the answers to the Jewish ones. And
Yep.
so that was what he chose and
Yep.
worked it out.
I always get a kick out of Ananias. Ananias is a holy man. He's praying. God comes to him. Ananias, I've got a job for you. Yes, God, what do you want me to do? Go over here into Damascus, a street called Straight, into this house. And Saul is there waiting. Who's that? Saul.
God is killing Christianity.
Are you sure about that, God? I've heard of Saul. You know who Saul is, right? What's God's response? Yes, I know. I've told him. Shut up and go. He's waiting for you. Called him by name. He said, I told him Ananias was coming. Shoo. So he did. Ananias walks in. He says, God told me to do this. Anything after this is on you. God uses us all, and he uses us the way he wants to. Doesn't matter how much we've messed up. And as you'll see, like I said, there's more coming. He knows that we're not going to be perfect in this growth process. Sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes you switch those numbers. But God said, if you keep holding on, I'm going to bring you along. Okay. Last call. All right. Father, thank you for your blessings. Thank you for your word. Lord, be with Jonathan. Give him some relief from the pain and heal his shoulder, Lord. Be with Janet. Be with the children who are suffering. Be with all of the names that were called. But most of all, Lord, be with your church. Help us to be what you want us to be. Help us to stay focused on you and to do your work. Thank you for loving us. And thank you for being patient with us. And in all things, may your will be done. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.